In this short video, I'm going to talk about how we remove bees from our honey supers. I've had a lot of comments and questions on why we do things the way we do, and even some questions asking why we don't do certain things like use bee blowers or fume boards. And the answer is we use all of the above. The way I use the most is triangle bee escapes. And like all of the methods for moving bees out of supers, it has its pros and cons. One of the problems with using bee escapes is it does take 2 trips. You go and lift the honey supers off the brood nest, put the escape on, and then put the supers back. And the other drawback is it doesn't get 100% of the bees out. There's always a few remnants. In our case this year, we were running a lot of very strong singles, and many of the bees just didn't clear out, I guess because the bottom box was so packed with bees that there just wasn't a way for them to get down through the hole, or some of them found their way back up through the escape. That's probably the more logical reason for the extra bees in the supers. That having been said, it's still my favorite way. One of the things that happens when you use bee escapes, if you've got really full supers, you'll have a lot of burr comb that kind of oozes and drips when you pull the supers apart. When you use an escape board and put the supers back on, when you come back in a few days, all of that mess is gone. Everything is completely dry and clean. We usually give the bees at least a day per super. If we have 3 medium or shallow supers on there, we'll try to give them at least 3 days, and that usually does the trick. If you got deep boxes, of course, it'll take a little longer. It's just a matter of putting the escape over the brood nest and then putting supers on top and coming back. And what we do if we have remnant bees left in the supers is we take a bee blower and just clear them out. We just purchased this recently and really fell in love with it. In the past, we've always used this bee blower, and it works pretty well, but it's noisy and it takes gasoline, and a lot of times you have to start it a lot in the bee yard. If you do several colonies that don't need blowing out, you might set this down and turn it off. Whereas with this electric one, it's so easy just to pull the trigger. The only drawback I can see with this electric one that uses batteries is that it eats through batteries pretty quickly. If you had a lot of colonies and you were going to use the bee blowers to blow all the bees out, you need several extra sets of batteries. What we're doing, just occasionally blowing out the remnants, isn't that big a deal. We replace a couple sets of batteries and it'll get us through the whole day. That's the advantage of a gasoline-driven blower, is it'll run all day and you don't run out of batteries. If I was only going to blow bees out with a bee blower rather than use escape boards, I would probably get a backpack bee blower that was much stronger than this one. They blow bees out quite a bit better than the smaller handheld ones. We've also used in the past escape or fume boards. They're pretty easy to use. Pros and cons again. You need a warm day for this thing to work. We use the product called Honey Robber. There's also a product called Bee Go, and there's several others. This is the one we use. And you just kind of sprinkle it on the inside of the lid and put it on the colony in the sun, and when it gets hot, it really stinks, honestly, and it drives the bees out of the supers. Works really well. It doesn't work on cool days, and it doesn't work on cloudy days as well. That's one of the drawbacks to this. The good part, of course, is that it's only one trip. Now, if you put too much stuff on here, or it gets hotter than you think it's going to, it can actually be so stinky that it'll make the bees sick and make them puke. You can just see them, they can't even get out of the super. It's made them ill, basically. And you have to be careful with this combination, but other than that, it works pretty good. There's also the old-fashioned way of just simply brushing them off with a brush. For somebody that just had a few colonies, that might be the way to go. Of course, that doesn't make any sense for us. Anyway, I'm going to put some clips on us using this blower in the bee yard and show how it works, and hopefully it'll be helpful. Okay, we've been putting on these triangle bee escapes. We like them, use them a lot. The bottom has kind of a double triangle maze that the bees have to go through to get down into the brood nest or the super below. This would be the top. It seems like all the bees have to eventually get down to the brood nest every couple of days, and they go through here, and very few of them find their way back through this maze. There are several kinds of bee escapes. This just happens to be the one we use. It takes about a day per super to get the bees out. You never get 100%, but it clears it out pretty good. 98% maybe of the bees end up below it. We're going to be 5 days before we get back here, so that's why I chose to put 4 boxes over an escape. And it doesn't matter where the box came from. This colony might have only had 1 or 2 boxes on it when we put the escape there. We'll take and put boxes from other colonies. I've never had a problem with fighting. It's not an issue. Oddly enough, most of the bees that you find in a super do go home. I'm sure a few stay, but it's always interesting to me how many actually do make it back home. Okay, John's got a trick up his sleeve here. If we have a little hole that a bee can get in and out like that, when the supers are above a escape board, you need to plug the holes, because once the bees have vacated the supers, robber bees can get in there and rob all the honey out. It just takes a little bitty hole like that. Now, because there's a honey flow going on right now, it may not be a problem. When there's a flow, robbing isn't so bad. If there's not a honey flow, you better get a hole like that plugged up, because all the colonies in the yard will find those little holes and rob the stacks of supers out. So that's the one drawback. Well, there's 2 drawbacks about escape boards. One is you have to make 2 trips, and the other is you got to have a bee-tight situation. Either have bee-tight equipment or take plastic or duct tape or something and plug up those holes. We got a new toy the other day. I thought I'd do a little short product review on it. We've been using a gasoline leaf blower as a bee blower. It's a still, and we got this bright idea that we'd try an electric battery operated one, and I looked at several and finally settled on this Makita. This thing really works. I'm really glad we bought it. These bees have escapes on them, but because some of them are singles and so full of bees, not all the bees come out of the supers, so we'll blow the remnants out with something like this. Anyway, this thing really works. I just thought I'd put my 2 cents in about this. Okay. So this super has a fair amount of bees left in it. Like I said, these singles are so full of bees that not all the bees go down below through the bee escape, but this thing just gets them out so fast. Yeah, it clears them out quick. I like this. It's much better than the gas-driven one. I'd recommend it. That's ready, John.
Okay.
Martin, I love your shirt. Turn around so I can see that shirt. Turn around.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
Nice shirt.
Yeah.